I need you to stay until the end of this video. Not because I'm asking you to, but because what I'm about to reveal here might be exactly what's missing to pull you out of where you are right now. There is something I discovered about the law of attraction that most people have never told you. Something hidden in the oldest pages in human history, and it completely changes the way you manifest. I will reveal it in the middle of this video. But first, I need you to listen with an open heart, because I know you came here carrying a weight that nobody around you is fully seeing. You believe. You genuinely believe that the universe can work in your favor. You read about the law of attraction. You tried to visualize. You tried to think positive thoughts. You tried to practice gratitude. You tried to vibrate at a higher frequency. And yet, when you open your eyes in the morning, the reality in front of you hasn't changed. The bills are still there. The bank account is still in the red. Your health is still fragile. The job still hasn't come. The relationship is still broken. And you begin to wonder, in silence, with a shame you don't share with anyone. Does this not work for me? Am I doing it wrong? Do I not deserve it? I want to look you in the eyes right now, even through this screen, and tell you something. You are not doing it wrong by suffering. You are not vibrating low because you are weak. You are in a moment of trial that, if understood correctly, is the exact inflection point that precedes your greatest breakthrough. And this is not just my opinion. This is something God has been saying throughout the entire history of humanity. Something that the science of manifestation has not yet learned to explain with the same depth. Think with me for a moment. Picture someone you know or have known. A person who went through terrible times. Job loss, debts, health problems, betrayal, deep loneliness. Maybe you yourself. And then suddenly, that person turned it around. They didn't just survive, they flourished in a way that seemed impossible. What happened at that turning point? What changed inside them before it changed around them? That is what compelled me to understand not just the law of attraction, but the principles beneath it. The foundations that no manifestation guru teaches you because they are written in a language not everyone is willing to honor. The law of attraction says you attract what you vibrate. Fair enough. The problem is that nobody teaches you what to do when you can't vibrate differently, because the reality around you is screaming louder than your faith. Nobody teaches you what to do when you try gratitude, but feel an anger you can't hide. When you try to visualize prosperity, but the bank notifications arrive in real time, contradicting every positive thought. When you try to smile, but you're lying in a bed that feels like it's draining everything out of you. That has a name. And God spoke about it long before any self-help book ever existed. In Romans chapter 4, verse 17, the Bible speaks of Abraham as one who before God, in whom he believed, who quickeneth the dead, and calleth those things which be not as though they were. Notice that phrase. Abraham was not manifesting from a good situation. He was 100 years old. His wife was barren. His own body, according to the scripture itself, was as good as dead. And yet he believed. And the scripture says that faith was counted unto him for righteousness. In other words, his faith in the middle of the impossible was what activated the supernatural. The law of attraction speaks of vibrational frequency. The Bible speaks of faith. And when you put the two together, you begin to understand that the problem is not your bad situation. The problem is what you are doing with it. But let's go slowly, because I know that talking about faith to someone who is suffering can sound like a bad joke. I've heard stories of people who were at rock bottom and went to church only to be told it was all their fault for not having enough faith, that they were suffering because they had sinned, that God was teaching them a lesson. That kind of message hurts and pushes people away. And that is not what I am here to say. I am here to tell you that spirituality, Whether it is called the law of attraction, biblical faith, connection with the divine, or any other name, it does not work in spite of your pain. It works through your pain when you learn to position your pain correctly. Let me tell you the story of a man named Joseph. Not the entire Joseph story from the Bible at once, but one specific slice of his life that most people move past too quickly. Joseph was loved by his father, had big dreams and genuine faith. And do you know what happened to him? His own brothers threw him into a pit. Then they sold him as a slave. Then he went to work in the house of a wealthy man and was falsely accused by the man's wife. Then he ended up in prison, locked up for years with no release date, no prospects, no one fighting for him. Now tell me, if Joseph were here today, do you think he could have easily vibrated high? Do you think it would have been easy for him to practice gratitude? Do you think visualization would have worked there? In that cell, hungry, betrayed, forgotten. And yet, in Genesis chapter 39, verse 21, the Bible says something extraordinary. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. The Lord was with Joseph, inside the prison. In his worst moment, God's presence did not depend on Joseph's external circumstances, and Joseph's conditions were being transformed from the inside out, while he maintained a posture I will call here operative faith. What is operative faith? It is when you don't pretend you're fine. It is not the fake faith that posts beautiful quotes online, but goes to sleep crying. It is the faith that says, I am here, I am suffering, I am afraid, and yet I choose to believe there is a way out. It is the faith that does not deny the pain, but also does not allow the pain to have the final word. And this is where the law of attraction and biblical spirituality meet in a way that will forever change your understanding of manifestation. Most people understood the law of attraction in a superficial way. Positive thought attracts positive, negative thought attracts negative. And so, when you find yourself in a hard moment, you panic because you think every bad thought is creating more bad reality. So you try to suppress the negative thoughts. Then you feel guilty for having difficult feelings. Then you get stuck in a cycle of anxiety about your own anxiety. And that, yes, that paralyzes manifestation. But what deep spirituality teaches you is different. It teaches you that it is not the isolated thought that creates reality. It is the dominant state of being. It is the deepest belief you carry. It is the identity you occupy on the inside, even if on the outside you are screaming with pain. In Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7, the Bible says that as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. The heart, not the surface thought you have while you are stressed, but what you believe about yourself in the deepest layers of your identity. This is why two people can be in the same financial situation, and one gets out of it quickly, and the other stays stuck for years. Not because one is more spiritual than the other, but because deep down, one believes there is a way out, that they deserve abundance, that God or the universe acts in their favor. And the other, beneath all the positivity they try to display, believes they don't deserve it, that nothing will ever change, that people like them don't get lucky. So the first practical step I give you today is not a visualization technique. It is an identity surgery. You need to ask yourself an honest question. What do I truly believe about myself? Not what I say in my morning affirmations, not what I post on social media, but what do I whisper to myself when I wake up at 3 in the morning and the silence is screaming? What do I actually think I deserve? What do I really think is reserved for someone like me? If the answer is nothing good, only suffering, I never managed to make it, then your manifestation has a compromised root, and no attraction technique will fix a compromised root, just as you cannot grow a healthy plant in poisoned soil, regardless of how many hours of sunlight you offer it. Now let's get to what I promised at the beginning of this video. That secret I discovered about the law of attraction, hidden in the oldest pages in the world. Pay attention, because this is going to reorganize everything. Most manifestation teachings place you at the center of the process. You visualize, you vibrate, you create. Your mind is the engine. You are the architect of your reality. And although there is truth in that perspective, it has a massive blind spot that is exactly the reason you get stuck when things get hard. The secret that the scriptures have been revealing for millennia is this: the highest manifestation power does not begin in you. It begins in a connection with a source that is greater than you. And when you learn to access that source, especially when you are at the bottom, that is precisely when the impossible begins to happen. In Philippians chapter 4, verses 11 and 12, Paul writes from inside a prison in unimaginable conditions and says, "I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be contented. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I have learned." He was not born knowing. He learned, and what he learned was not to ignore suffering, not to pretend everything was fine. He learned to maintain a connection with an inner source that did not depend on external circumstances. And it is precisely that connection that translates into vibrational frequency in the vocabulary of the law of attraction. When you are connected to something greater than yourself, whether you call it God, Spirit, Universe, or Source, your frequency changes not because the circumstances changed, but because you changed the anchor of your frequency. You stopped anchoring your emotional state to the bank account, the relationship, your health, the job, and you began to anchor to something that does not fluctuate. This is what the prophets did. This is what the greatest manifestors in history did. They did not visualize from the ego. They surrendered to a current that was greater than themselves, and the results were exponential. But how do you do this in practice when you are in a situation of real pain? Let me give you concrete steps. The first step is what I call honoring the transformation process. Stop fighting your current situation. That doesn't mean passive acceptance. It means stopping the waste of emotional energy on resisting what is already happening. Resistance is a frequency drain. When you remain furious at what has already happened, at the situation that is already in place, at the reality that is already set, you are using energy that should be directed toward creating the next chapter. There is a verse in Isaiah, chapter 43, verses 18 and 19, that is extraordinary in this sense. God says, "Remember ye not the former things, neither consider the things of old. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness, and rivers in the desert." Rivers in the desert, a way in the wilderness. This is God's language about manifestation in impossible situations. And the invitation is, stop looking at what was left behind. Something new is already springing forth. Can you perceive it? Perceiving here is not a visual or intellectual perception. It is a spiritual perception of faith that precedes physical manifestation. You need to begin to perceive in the sense of feeling real, something that does not yet exist in the physical realm. This is exactly what the law of attraction calls living in the state of the wish fulfilled. And it is exactly what the Bible calls walking by faith and not by sight, as written in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. The second practical step is to rebuild your internal environment with intentional rituals, not empty affirmations. Rituals with meaning. There is an enormous difference between repeating "I am prosperous" 50 times in the mirror while feeling like you are lying, and creating a spiritual connection ritual that genuinely repositions your inner state. What is a connection ritual? It is setting aside time in the day, preferably in the morning, to go quiet and access something inside you that is greater than the problem. It can be prayer, it can be meditation, it can be reading a passage that genuinely inspires you, it can be music that opens your heart. The criterion is not the technique. The criterion is the real connection. In that moment, you do not ask for things. You seek a state. You seek to genuinely feel gratitude for something, anything, even the fact that you are breathing. Genuine gratitude, not performative. And when you find that state, even if only for 3 minutes, you have just reconfigured your dominant frequency for the day. In Psalms chapter 100, verse 4, it says, "Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him, and bless his name." The gates of manifestation open with gratitude. This is a spiritual principle that has been in place for millennia, and modern neuroscience confirms that gratitude literally rewires the brain, changing neural activation patterns and the body's biochemical state. The third step is to decouple your faith from immediate results. This is the hardest one, and it is exactly where most people get stuck. We have conditioned our faith to a deadline. I believe things will change, but if they haven't changed by a certain date, then it doesn't work. And then when the deadline passes without change, faith collapses, frequency collapses, and that is when the negative cycle truly sets in. The Bible has a specific word for this, patience, and it is not a passive concept. It is an active state of maintaining faith in the face of delay. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 36, it is written, "For ye have need of patience, that, after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise." After ye have done, not before doing. The result comes after you have already made the movement of faith, after you have already acted as if it were possible, after you have already walked in the direction of what you believe. And there is an interval between the act of faith and the manifestation. It is in that interval that most people give up. Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 2 and 3 says something absolutely revolutionary. God instructs the prophet, "Write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Though it tarry, wait for it." This is not passivity. It is the active posture of someone who knows that what was established in the spiritual realm will manifest in the physical realm. The delay is not a denial. The delay is a process. Now, for those of you in a season of waiting who need concrete tools to maintain that posture, I want to share something I put together with great care and intention. The ebook A-Tract, Divine Abundance, was created precisely for people at this exact point. Those who want to manifest but need to internally align spiritual principles with practical daily action. In it, I go deeper into each of the concepts we're exploring here, with exercises, strategic prayers, and a 21-day roadmap to rewire your prosperity identity. You'll find it in the first pinned comment on this video and in the QR code on your screen right now. But stay with me, because what comes next is where everything starts clicking into place. The fourth practical step is to learn to use your pain as fuel for manifestation. This goes against everything you were taught, but it may be the most transformative insight I have for you today. Most manifestation teachings tell you to flee from negative feelings, not to focus on the problem, to change the channel when a bad thought appears. And there is wisdom in that. But there is also a huge limitation, because you cannot escape your real feelings. And when you try, they grow stronger. What the greatest spiritual writers in history, from David to Paul, from Job to Jeremiah, show us is that honest lament before God is a powerful form of emotional release that opens the way for renewal. David wrote psalms of profound despair. Psalm chapter 22, verse 1. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from my roaring? That is despair. That is someone screaming from within an impossible situation. And that same man ends the very same psalm, declaring that he will praise God in the great congregation, that he will fulfill his vows before those who fear him. Within the same experience, the pain was turned upward toward God, and that changed everything. What I am telling you is, do not pretend you are not suffering. Use your suffering as a door into an honest conversation with the divine. Cry if you need to. Complain if you need to. But complain upward, not inward. Lament in the direction of the source, not in the direction of the abyss. When you bring your pain to God, or to your deepest spiritual source, something happens energetically. You release the emotional load that was blocking the flow. You create space, and it is in that space that the light enters. In Psalms chapter 34, verse 18, it is written, The Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Near those with a broken heart, not far from them, not disappointed in them, near. This is the God of the Bible. This is the universe that is available to you right now with a broken heart, with empty pockets, with an exhausted body. The fifth step is to begin acting from your future identity, not from your present situation. This is what I call prophetic action. A prophet does not only describe the present. A prophet speaks from a reality that is yet to come as if it were already present. And when you begin to act, even in small things, from who you are becoming and not from who you have been, you signal to the universe that your transformation has already begun. What does this look like in practice? It looks like this. You are unemployed and have no money, but you start waking up at the hour an active professional would wake up. You organize your space as if you were already at the level you are aiming for. You take care of your appearance like someone who respects themselves and believes in their own future. You begin to speak about yourself in your internal dialogue with the language of someone who is building, not someone who is collapsing. This is not fake it till you make it in the superficial sense. This is a spiritual declaration of identity. It is you saying to the quantum field, to the creative intelligence of the universe, to God himself, I already know who I am on the inside, and the outside is going to have to align with that. The Proverbs 31 woman is portrayed as someone who already lives from her full identity. In Proverbs chapter 31, verse 25, it says, Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She rejoices in the days ahead, not because tomorrow is guaranteed, but because she is not anchored to tomorrow. She's anchored in her identity, which is solid regardless of what tomorrow brings. You can begin building that today, not when things get better. Today. The sixth step is to guard your information environment with spiritual discipline. This is urgent and most people completely ignore it. If you spend hours each day consuming alarming news, content that provokes fear, comparisons that diminish your self-worth, gossip, other people's dramas, political arguments that leave you in a permanent state of anger, then you are literally injecting toxins into your vibrational frequency every single day. And then you try to meditate for 10 minutes and wonder why it isn't working. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, Paul says something that is a perfect guide for content curation. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are lovely. Think on these things. It is an active instruction. It is a deliberate choice. What you feed your mind, what you allow to enter through your eyes and ears. This is shaping your dominant frequency far more than those 10 minutes of morning affirmation. If you want to attract good things, you need to create an internal environment where good things can settle. That means selecting what you watch, what you read, who you talk to, what you listen to. Not because you are going to isolate yourself from reality, but because you are going to take control of your spiritual and mental diet with the same seriousness that someone recovering from illness takes control of their physical diet. The seventh step is to find the vision that pulls you forward. And here, I return to the principle from Habakkuk. Write the vision. There is extraordinary power in putting on paper in specific terms what you are believing will happen in your life, not as a childish wish list, but as a grounded declaration of faith. The written vision does several things at once. It clarifies what you truly want, because many people are not attracting what they want simply because they don't know exactly what they want. It anchors the intention, pulling the desire out of the foggy realm of fantasy and into the concrete plane of conscious creation. It functions as a focal point for your thoughts and energy during moments of crisis. And it registers a spiritual commitment with God or the universe about the direction of your life. When Joseph was thrown into the pit by his brothers, he had dreams, specific dreams about his future. And it was those dreams that sustained his identity through years of slavery and imprisonment. It was not favorable circumstances that kept Joseph intact. It was a vision he carried on the inside that was more real than any external prison. What do you believe your life can become? Write it with detail, with faith, as if it has already happened, as if you are describing a memory from the future. Now I need to speak about something that is the elephant in the room of every conversation about manifestation and faith. Guilt. The feeling that if something hasn't manifested, it must be because you did something wrong, because you weren't faithful enough, because you vibrated incorrectly, because you sinned, because you don't deserve it. That thought is one of the greatest spiritual saboteurs that exists. And it is especially cruel because it disguises itself as spiritual responsibility, appearing virtuous when in reality it is an ego trap that keeps you stuck. The Bible is absolutely clear about this. In Romans chapter 8, verse 1, Paul writes, "There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus." None. Zero. Not little condemnation. Not reduced condemnation. None. If you believe, you are not being punished by your situation. You are in a process. And process is not punishment. Job is perhaps the most powerful example of this in the entire Bible. A man about whom the Bible itself says he was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. And he lost everything. Children, wealth, health, and his friends came to tell him it must be his fault, that he must have done something wrong, that he was reaping what he had sown. And God, at the end of the book, said the friends were wrong. Job was right to believe he had a relationship with God that did not depend on external circumstances of blessing or cursing. Your difficult situation is not evidence of divine abandonment. It is not punishment. It is not a sign that you vibrated wrong. It may be a process. It may be a redirection. It may be a strengthening. It may be preparation for something you cannot yet see from where you are standing. And this leads us to one of the most liberating truths I know. Sometimes, what looks like the worst moment of your life is actually the most fertile soil for the greatest harvest you will ever have. Joseph was sold into slavery and ended up governing Egypt. David was hunted by Saul for years, living in caves and in the wilderness, and became the greatest king of Israel. Paul was imprisoned, stoned, shipwrecked, and changed the course of the world. The Bible is not a collection of stories about people who had easy lives and manifested everything effortlessly. It is a collection of stories about people who discovered the power of God in the middle of the most impossible circumstances. And I find myself wondering, what are you discovering right now, in the middle of your hardest situation, that you could never have discovered if things had been easy? There's a version of you that is only born in the fire. There is a strength in you that is only discovered under pressure. There is a faith in you that only becomes evident when everything else you could have leaned on is no longer available. And that version of you, that faith, that power, is exactly what you will need to sustain the level that is coming. Because God does not prepare the blessing without preparing the vessel. And preparing the vessel hurts. It always has. For every person you admire spiritually, it always hurt. Let me now speak directly to those going through specific financial hardship, because I know this is the situation that most paralyzes people in the manifestation process. When you are in debt, with overdue bills, with fear of what's coming, it feels impossible to think abundance. It feels like a lie. It feels like madness. And this is where I need to give you a distinction that will change everything. Abundance does not begin with money. It begins with a mental and spiritual state of sufficiency. Sufficiency is not resignation. It is the capacity to recognize that in this moment, you have enough to continue it. You have air. You have the ability to think. You have access to information that can change your trajectory. And from that state of basic sufficiency, you begin to expand. In 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7, there is a powerful story about a widow who was about to have her sons taken as slaves to pay a debt. She goes to the prophet Elisha in desperation, and he asks, "What hast thou in the house?" She says, "Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house, save a pot of oil." And Elisha tells her to borrow as many empty vessels as she can find. Go inside, shut the door, and begin to pour the oil. Notice the detail. The miracle began with what she already had, not with what was missing, not with what she needed, with what she had. The pot of oil was a small thing, but it was the starting point of the miracle. You have something, even if it seems insufficient, even if it seems ridiculously small compared to the size of the problem. What you have can be the starting point of your miracle if you begin to treat that something as sacred, as a seed, as the beginning of something much greater. This is energetic and spiritual stewardship of what you have. Treat the little with respect and responsibility as if it were already much. Give what you can, even if it is little, because generosity opens the flow of abundance in a way that no manifestation technique can replicate. In Luke chapter 6, verse 38, Jesus says, "Give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down and shaken together, and running over shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye meted withal, it shall be measured to you again. Shall be measured to you again. That is a law, not a pretty suggestion. It is a spiritual and energetic law that quantum physics today begins to touch at its edges. What you put into circulation returns to you multiplied. What you treat with scarcity contracts. What you treat with generosity expands. For those dealing with severe depression or anxiety, I need a moment of deep honesty. When the nervous system is in survival mode, when the brain is flooded with cortisol, when serotonin levels are low, the instruction to vibe high can feel not only useless, but cruel. And I deeply respect that spirituality does not replace mental health care. If you are in real psychological suffering, seeking professional help is an act of faith, not a lack of faith. Taking care of your mental health is honoring the temple that God placed you to inhabit. Body, mind, and spirit are an integrated system. You cannot sustain elevated frequency in a system that is collapsing, just as you cannot win a race in a car without fuel. That said, there are simple spiritual and physical practices that help change the body's biochemical state that are completely available to you, regardless of the situation. Physical movement, even 10 minutes of walking, exposure to sunlight, genuine human connection, even a 5-minute conversation. Serving someone in some way, because the act of serving redirects the ego's attention away from its own suffering and activates neurological circuits of well-being. Singing, especially in a spiritual context, which is why worship has always been so central in every spiritual tradition in the world. In Acts chapter 16, verses 25 and 26, Paul and Silas were in prison, in stocks, in the innermost part of the jail. And the Bible says that at midnight Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God. And the prisoners heard them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken. And immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's bands were loosed. Praise opened the prison, not metaphorically, literally. And I believe this principle operates both in the spiritual realm and in the neuroscientific realm. When you praise, when you access the frequency of gratitude and worship, even in the middle of suffering, something changes in your system. Something comes loose. Doors that were shut begin to open. You don't need to feel like praising in order to praise. Paul and Silas certainly did not feel happy in that prison, but they made an active choice to access a higher frequency despite the circumstances. And this is exactly what you can do today. Before you go to sleep tonight, in the middle of your chaos, you can sing, you can give thanks, you can pray not asking, but simply acknowledging that there is a presence that is with you in this moment. Let me give you now a 24-hour roadmap you can begin today, not when things get better, but today. That will start moving the needle of your manifestation in a real way. When you wake up, before picking up your phone, spend 2 minutes in silence. Place one hand on your chest. Feel your own heartbeat. Say quietly or mentally, "Thank you for another day. I am here. I believe something new is springing forth." That is enough to begin. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be long. It has to be real. After that, read or listen to something that inspires faith. A verse, a passage from a book that makes you feel larger than your problems. A song that opens your heart. 5 minutes, not because it will solve everything, but because you are choosing what you will plant in the mental soil of your day. During the day, every time a thought of despair or catastrophizing appears, and it will appear, don't fight it, acknowledge it. Say to yourself, "I notice this thought. It is not me," and then deliberately replace it with an opening question. Not with a positive affirmation you don't believe. With a genuine question. How could this resolve? What am I not seeing yet? What might God be doing behind the scenes in this situation? Open questions move the brain from defense mode to creation mode. In the afternoon, write one thing, just one, that you can do today, that is aligned with the vision of what you want for your life. Not something monumental. It can be sending a resume. It can be researching something. It can be making a phone call you have been avoiding. It can be organizing a drawer. It can be writing your vision for the first time. One small but intentional action that says to the universe, I am in motion. I am cooperating with the process. At night, before sleeping, take a gratitude inventory, not a performative gratitude list. A genuine gratitude for 3 things that happened during the day, no matter how small. The internet connection that worked, the food you had, the bed you have, the conversation that made you smile, the mind that is still functioning. Genuine gratitude reframes the day that has passed and configures the emotional state you carry into sleep. And it is during sleep that much of the spiritual and psychological processing happens. And then sleep in trust, not pretending everything is fine, but trusting that the process is unfolding even while you sleep. In Psalms chapter 127, verse 2, there is a phrase that always moves me deeply. For so he giveth his beloved sleep. God works while you rest. The manifestation field does not stop when you stop. Truly trusting this, really trusting it, is one of the highest frequencies you can activate. Now, let me tell you how this story can end. And when I say that, I'm not talking about an imaginary ending. I'm talking about patterns that repeat in the history of people who went through what you are going through and arrived at a place that once seemed impossible. There is a moment, and I need you to be prepared for it, when change begins to appear, not as an explosion, generally as a small crack, an opportunity that arises from nowhere, an unexpected conversation, an idea that shows up at the wrong time in exactly the right place, a door that opens in a completely different hallway from the one you were watching. And when that crack appears, you are going to need to be in a state of readiness to recognize it and act on it. People who are in a state of intense despair often cannot recognize the openings when they appear because they are staring at the problem, not the exit. The work you do now while you wait is not just maintenance work. It is preparation for when the moment arrives. In Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4, it is written, He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. Translated into our conversation, whoever waits for perfect conditions to act never acts. Whoever waits to feel good before starting never starts so. You begin imperfectly. You begin afraid. You begin in the middle of chaos. And by beginning, the conditions start to change. I also need to speak to you about relationships during this period. Who you allow to speak into your life right now matters enormously. There is a category of people I call negative prophets. These are people who, with every good intention in the world, tell you everything that could go wrong. Remind you of everyone who tried and didn't succeed. Validate and amplify your fear, and leave the conversation with you having less faith than when you entered. You don't need to cut these people out of your life. But you do need to limit the amount of belief you place in what they say about your future. And at the same time, intentionally seek out, even online, people who have overcome situations similar to yours and arrived at the other side. Not to compare, but to prove to your nervous system that it is possible, that there's another side. In Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20, it is written, He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. The human environment you frequent is shaping your beliefs, your internal language, and therefore your frequency, in a way that is often invisible but profoundly powerful. There is one last thing I want to say to you in this video, and it is perhaps the most important thing of all. Your current situation does not define your destiny. I know that sounds like a motivational quote, but listen with your heart, because I am being absolutely literal. The physical reality you are seeing right now is the result of beliefs, decisions, and circumstances from the past. It is a photograph of the past developed in the present. It is not a prophecy of the future. Your future is being woven right now through the beliefs you are choosing, the actions you are taking, the spiritual state you are cultivating, the words you are speaking about yourself and about your situation. Every small choice you make today is a vote for the future version of your life.
In Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19, God says, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. He is saying, the choice is yours. Not the circumstances, not the history, not what others did or didn't do to you. The choice of the direction of your life, of where you are pointing, of what you are declaring about your future, that choice is yours.
The choice of the direction of your life, of where you are pointing, of what you are declaring about your future, that choice is yours. And you can make that choice today, right now, in this moment. Not when you get out of debt, not when the job comes, not when your health improves, not when the relationship gets resolved. Now, with everything that is hard, with everything that hasn't been resolved yet, with all the pain that is still present. Today you can choose to orient yourself toward life, toward possibility, toward faith, toward the abundance that comes from a connection with something greater than yourself. And when you make that choice, not once, but repeatedly, every morning, every time fear appears, every time the bills arrive, every time exhaustion hits, when you keep making that choice, you will not only attract good things into your life, you will become someone who does not need favorable circumstances to have peace. Someone who does not depend on external results to maintain faith. Someone who knows, from the very core of their being, that regardless of what is happening right now, there is a force working in favor of their good in a way they cannot yet fully see. But that is absolutely real. And that is exactly the person who is ready to receive and sustain what God has for their life. That person is you, today, in this situation, with everything that feels heavy. You are capable of attracting good things, not in spite of being at the bottom, but from the bottom, with the same power that God used to pull Joseph out of prison and place him in the palace, with the same faith that Paul used to shake chains from inside a cell, with the same grace that God poured out on Abraham when all he had was an impossible promise and a heart that chose to believe. The turnaround is closer than you think. Keep going. Guard your faith. Guard your inner state. Act in the direction of what you believe. And let the universe, let God, do the part that only He can do. I believe in you. And more important than that, there is an infinite and intelligent force that believes in you too, and is working on your behalf right now, while you watch this video, while you breathe, while you choose one more time to believe that there is a way. There is, and you are going to find it.